She secretly siphoned $200, $0 from our joint account to buy her lover a house, then betrayed me in court over the inheritance I inherited from my grandfather's estate. Now I fear I'll lose everything. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy who finds out his wife, Sarah, has been sleeping around, stealing from us, and lying through her teeth. I knew she was a bit high maintenance, always bitching about money, about how I wasn't doing enough, but I never suspected she'd go this far. It all started with little things, missed texts, late nights, a strange number popping up on her phone now and then. I brushed it off, convinced she was just stressed or maybe she was talking to some friend. But then things got worse. It was about 3 weeks ago when I first noticed the bank account activity. Sarah's always been good at hiding her tracks, but I'm not an idiot. I'd been checking the joint account regularly, especially since we'd been planning to buy a house. But one day I saw a withdrawal $200 completely unaccounted for. That's when I started digging deeper. I pulled up bank statements, looked through her phone, her emails. That's when I found the real bombshell. She had siphoned off that money over the past year slowly, secretly. It wasn't just for some shopping spree. She'd been funneling that cash to buy her lover a house. Her lover was someone I'd never even heard of before, an older guy, probably in his late 50s, with a fancy house down in Florida. Turns out, Sarah had been seeing him on the side for months. I found texts, emails, even pictures of her at his place in bed, smiling like she was the happiest woman alive. The worst part, she'd lied to me about everything, said she was working late, going to yoga, meeting friends. Meanwhile, she was screwing this guy, buying him a house and secretly stealing from our joint account to do it. I was stunned, honestly. My mind just couldn't process what I was seeing. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I knew. She was bitchy, manipulative, and good at lying, but this was next level. It was like she had a whole secret life I knew nothing about. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs. Her sudden mood swings, the late nights, the way she was always distracted, secretive about her phone. I thought she was just stressed about work or something trivial. Turns out, she was planning her escape with her lover while secretly draining our savings. I remember sitting alone in the dark that night, staring at the bank statement, feeling this cold knot tighten in my stomach. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious all at once. I couldn't believe I married someone who would do this to me, someone I'd trusted with everything. I started questioning everything about our marriage, about her. How long had she been planning this? How many lies had I bought? I felt like a fool, like I'd been played for a sucker. The worst part, she was so good at lying, so convincing, that I'd never suspected a thing until I saw that account statement. And then came the hardest part, figuring out what to do next. I knew I couldn't just sit around and let her keep doing whatever she wanted. I had to confront her, but I wasn't sure how. Should I call her out in front of everyone? Should I wait and catch her in the act? I felt like I was on the edge of a breakdown, but I knew I had to act fast before she managed to cover her tracks even more. I decided I'd gather more evidence, get a lawyer, and figure out my next move. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning of a long, painful road ahead. The day I confronted Sarah is burned into my mind. I remember walking into the living room, my hands trembling, heart pounding like I'd just run a marathon. I had my phone recording just in case I needed proof. I'd already decided I wasn't going to let her spin her lies again. I didn't trust her anymore, not one bit. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, looking smug, like she had no idea what was coming. I took a deep breath and just blurted out, "Sarah, I know everything. The money, the affair, the house in Florida. I saw the bank statements. I know you've been siphoning money from our account to buy that guy a house. How long has this been going on?" Her face instantly changed. That bitchy, fake smile disappeared. She looked at me like I was crazy. "What are you talking about? You're just paranoid. You've been looking at my phone again, haven't you? You're always snooping." I pressed record on my phone. "Don't lie to me. I found the emails, the texts. You've been lying about everything, your late nights, your yoga classes, your work meetings." You've been screwing around, stealing from us, and now I find out you're buying a house for your lover." She scoffed, crossing her arms. "You don't understand, Jay. It's not what you think. I was just helping him out. It's not a big deal. We're just having a relationship. It's not like I'm leaving you or anything." I felt my stomach turn. That was her classic line, "It's not a big deal." But it was everything. She'd been lying to me for months, lying about her feelings, lying about her intentions. And now she's trying to downplay it like it was nothing. I couldn't believe how cold and manipulative she was being. I felt my anger rising hot, uncontrollable. I demanded, "Why? Why did you do all this? Why steal from us? Why buy a house for some guy? I thought we had something real, Sarah. I thought I was your husband." She rolled her eyes. "You're overreacting, Jay. You're always so jealous. It's just sex, and he's not even that important. I was going through a rough patch, okay? I needed something to make me happy. You wouldn't understand." That was her go-to excuse. "You wouldn't understand." Like I was some clueless idiot who couldn't see what she was doing. I wasn't buying it. I told her I was done with her lies, that I wanted answers, and that I wasn't going to let her ruin what little we had left. She looked at me with that bitchy smirk, then said, "You're just jealous because I found someone who actually cares about me. Maybe you should look at yourself, Jay. Maybe you're the problem." That was the final straw. I felt like I was going to explode. I realized then that she had no remorse, no guilt, just this arrogant attitude, like she was the victim. I knew I had to get out, but I also knew I couldn't just walk away without doing something about it. I had to protect what was mine, our money, our inheritance, everything my grandfather left me. I started thinking about legal options, about how I could use this information to fight back. The emotional roller coaster hit me hard. I was furious, betrayed, and deeply hurt. I kept replaying her words, her sneers, her lies. I also felt a strange relief. Finally, I knew the truth. But the relief was short-lived because I also felt helpless. I was stuck in this nightmare, wondering how I let it go this far, how I missed all the signs. I felt like I'd been played, used, and discarded like an old toy. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at the ceiling, thinking about my options. I knew I couldn't stay with her, not after this. But I also knew I had to be smart. I started gathering more evidence, screenshots, bank statements, everything I could find. I wanted to make sure I'd have all the ammo I needed before I made my next move. I was angry. Yes, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I was done being naive. Sarah had shown me who she really was, and I wasn't going to let her walk all over me anymore. After that confrontation, everything changed. I knew I had to act fast, but I also needed to be cautious. Sarah was good at deception, and I couldn't afford to let her catch me off guard. I decided I'd gather every piece of evidence I could: texts, emails, bank info, anything that could prove her betrayal. I started digging into her phone more thoroughly, snooping through her apps, her messages. It was sickening, really. I found dozens of messages with her lover, planning their meetings, talking about the house, about how she was going to leave me once she had everything she wanted. I couldn't believe how cold she was. She lied constantly, told me she loved me, that I was the best thing in her life. Meanwhile, she was screwing around, stealing money, and plotting her escape. I felt like I was living in some twisted soap opera. Every time I uncovered another lie, it burned me inside. How could she do this? How could she pretend everything was normal when she was secretly cheating, lying, and draining our savings? One night, I decided to check the bank account again. I wanted to see if she'd made any more withdrawals or transfers. What I found chilled me to the bone. There was another transfer, this time $50, $0, going to an offshore account. I immediately suspected she was trying to hide even more money from me. I realized she was planning to leave me with nothing, just like that. She'd already taken a huge chunk of our savings, and now she was trying to cover her tracks even more. That's when I started thinking about legal options. I contacted a lawyer the next day, explained everything. I wanted to know how to protect myself, how to get my inheritance back, and how to stop her from draining more money. The lawyer told me I had grounds for a divorce, especially with all the evidence I was gathering. But I also realized I needed to be smart about how I handled this. Sarah was cunning. She had a way of twisting things, making herself look innocent. I had to stay one step ahead. In the meantime, I started planning. My next moves. I installed a few discreet cameras around the house, just in case she tried to hide more evidence or sneak out. I kept a close eye on her bank accounts and her phone activity. I knew she was planning something, probably trying to escape with what little she had left. I also started talking to friends and family, trying to get support and perspective. I needed allies, especially if this was going to turn ugly. Emotionally, I was a mess. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious. Every thought kept circling back to how she had lied, cheated, and stolen from us. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I was so blind. It was like waking up from a nightmare, but the nightmare was real. I couldn't understand how she could be so bitchy, so manipulative, so utterly lacking in remorse. I thought about the future, what I'd lose if she managed to take everything. Our house, the inheritance, my peace of mind. It was overwhelming. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I knew I had to be strong. I couldn't let her win. I started drafting a plan, how to confront her. Again, how to protect what was mine and how to finally put an end to her lies. I knew I couldn't trust her anymore. The woman I thought I knew was just a facade. Beneath it all was someone who would betray her own husband for a house, money, and a secret lover. And I was just supposed to sit back and accept it. No way. I was done being the naive guy she walked all over. It was time to fight back, even if it meant losing everything in the process. The more I dug into her phone and bank accounts, the clearer it became how deeply she'd gone off the rails. I found messages from her lover, long, intimate conversations, plans for their future, pictures of her in bed with him, smiling like she'd never betrayed me. She'd been living a double life for months, and I was just now catching up. The thing that really tore me apart was the realization that she'd been lying to me every single day, pretending everything was fine, while secretly siphoning off our money and playing house with a man old enough to be her father. I remember sitting at my desk one evening, staring at the screen, feeling numb. I had all this evidence, but I wasn't sure what to do with it yet. I knew I couldn't confront her blindly. I had to be strategic. So I started compiling everything, screenshots of her messages, copies of bank statements, her emails, anything I could use to prove her deception. I also reached out to a lawyer I found online, someone who specialized in divorce and financial disputes. I explained the situation, and he told me I had a strong case, especially since I had proof of her stealing from our joint account and her infidelity. What made this even worse was that she'd been planning to leave me with nothing. The offshore transfer of $50, $0 was just the tip of the iceberg. I knew she probably had more hidden somewhere, maybe in secret accounts or cash stashed away. The inheritance I'd received from my grandfather's estate was supposed to be my safety net, but I was terrified she'd try to claim some of it in court, or worse, just take it all in the divorce. I felt so betrayed, not just by her cheating, but by how she'd manipulated the situation to her advantage. I decided I needed to confront her again, but this time I'd do it with the evidence in hand. I wanted her to see I wasn't messing around. I scheduled a meeting for the next day, telling her I wanted to talk about our marriage and the future. She acted all innocent when I brought up the bank stuff, denying everything, throwing out the classic, "You're just paranoid. I don't know what you're talking about and you're overreacting." But I had the evidence and I made sure she knew it. I played her the recordings I'd made, showed her the bank statements, and laid it all out on the table. Her reaction was priceless. She turned pale, then furious, then downright bitchy. She yelled, blaming me for everything, saying I didn't trust her, that I was crazy, that I was just jealous of her success. She said she was just trying to find herself, and that the affair was nothing serious, just a mistake she'd made because she was unhappy. I couldn't believe her lies. She was so good at spinning stories, pretending she was the victim. I felt a mix of rage and sadness. How could someone I loved and trusted turn into this manipulative, selfish person? I told her she had two choices: tell the truth and face the consequences, or keep lying and see how far I was willing to go to protect myself. I made it clear I was not going to be her fool anymore. I was done with the lies, the cheating, the theft. I told her I was going to see a lawyer, start divorce proceedings, and fight for my inheritance and what was rightfully mine. She tried to deny everything, but I had the proof she couldn't refute. That night I felt exhausted but also oddly relieved. I knew the worst was yet to come, but at least I had taken the first step. I was finally standing up for myself, no longer willing to be a passive victim. I kept replaying her words, her lies, her smirk, and I knew I couldn't trust her anymore. I had to protect my money, my future, and my sanity. The betrayal ran so deep. It was like I'd lost a part of myself, but I was determined to fight for what was left. I wasn't going to let her take everything, her greed, her lies, her manipulations, without a fight. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I had my lawyer draft up a divorce petition, and I made sure every piece of evidence was organized and ready to go. I also contacted a forensic accountant to help me trace every penny she'd stolen, including the offshore transfer and any hidden accounts she might have. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how deeply she'd planned her escape. It wasn't just a fling. It was a full-blown scheme to take everything I had, including my inheritance from my grandfather's estate. I remember feeling a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief that I finally knew the truth, that I could fight back. Dread because I knew she'd fight me tooth and nail, probably accuse me of everything under the sun just to turn the tables. Sarah was good at twisting things. She had a way of making herself look like the victim no matter what she did. I was preparing myself for a battle, mentally and emotionally. I knew this wasn't going to be easy. One morning, I caught her sneaking around the house with her phone, trying to hide something. I confronted her directly. I told her I had everything, proof of the affair, proof of the money siphoning, the emails, the texts. I told her I was done playing her game. I said I was going to file for divorce, take her to court and fight for my inheritance and the money she stole. Her face twisted with anger, then she started crying, fake tears, I knew. She begged, said she was sorry, that she loved me, that it was all a mistake. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I had already made up my mind. I told her I was going to fight for what's mine, and I warned her that if she didn't come clean, I'd expose everything in court. I told her she could keep lying, but I had the evidence and I was prepared to use it. She looked at me with that bitchy sneer, then said she'd do whatever it takes to keep what she wanted. That's when I realized she was capable of anything. She'd burn bridges, lie, cheat, steal, just to get her way. In the meantime, I kept up my surveillance. I installed a couple of discreet cameras around the house, just in case she tried to sneak out or destroy evidence. I also started documenting her movements, her conversations, anything suspicious. I couldn't trust her anymore. Every day she'd get more desperate, more manipulative. She started accusing me of being paranoid, of spying on her, of trying to control her. But I knew better. I knew she was just trying to cover her tracks, to save herself. I also reached out to some friends and family, telling them what was happening. I wanted support, advice, and maybe some witnesses if things got ugly. I felt like I was fighting a war on multiple fronts, emotionally, financially, legally. My heart was heavy, but I knew I had to stay strong. I'd already lost so much trust, and I was determined not to lose everything else: my inheritance, my home, my dignity. The worst part was realizing how much she had lied, how she had played me for a fool. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, the late nights, the secret calls, her strange behavior. I'd always thought she was just stressed or busy, but it was all a cover-up. She'd been planning her escape for months, maybe longer. It made me feel stupid, gullible, and betrayed. But at the same time, I knew I had to take control of the situation for my own sake. Now, I'm just waiting for the legal process to unfold. I've got everything in order and I'm ready to fight for my rights. Honestly, I don't know what the future holds, but I do know one thing. I won't let her steal my inheritance or ruin what's left of my life. I've learned the hard way that some people are capable of incredible betrayal, and you have to be prepared to fight back if you want to come out of it with any shred of dignity. The court date finally came and I was ready. I had all my evidence organized: texts, emails, bank statements, forensic accountant reports. I knew she'd try to spin it to lie her way out, but I was prepared. The courtroom was tense. Sarah sat there with that bitchy smirk, trying to act innocent, as if she hadn't been planning her escape for months. But I saw through her act. I saw the flicker of guilt in her eyes when the lawyer presented the proof of her theft and her affair. When the judge asked about the money, I laid everything out. How she siphoned $200, $0 from our joint account, bought her lover a house, and tried to hide it all. I explained how she betrayed me not just emotionally but financially, and how her lies had destroyed the trust we once had. I could see her trying to deny, trying to twist things, but her words sounded hollow against the mountain of evidence I had. In her testimony, she tried to downplay everything, claiming she did it out of desperation, that her affair was just a mistake, that she loved me but was unhappy, but her words rang false. The judge saw through her. The forensic accountant's report was irrefutable. The judge didn't buy her tears or her excuses. He awarded me the inheritance, ordered her to repay every dollar she stole, and granted me full custody of my assets. Watching her reaction was almost satisfying. Her bitchy facade cracked for a moment, and I saw real panic in her eyes. She knew she was losing everything: her house, her lover, her chance at a fresh start. As she was ordered to pay restitution and face the consequences, I felt a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. I'd fought hard for this, and I'd won. In the aftermath, I started rebuilding my life. I moved out of the house we shared, got a new place, and focused on healing. I cut all ties with Sarah. I knew I'd never forget what she did, but I also knew I couldn't let her define me. I learned that trust is fragile, and some betrayals cut so deep they leave scars that never fully heal. But I also learned that with patience, planning, and a little bit of cunning, you can fight back, no matter how bad it looks. Looking back, I wish I could say I'm completely over it, but I'm not. I'm still healing, still piecing myself back together, but I'm stronger now. I see people differently. I won't be naive again. And I hope anyone reading this who's going through something similar knows. Don't ignore the signs, trust your instincts, and never let anyone take everything from you without a fight. The betrayal may hurt like hell, but in the end, standing up for yourself is what truly matters.